it is 3:30, and we are going to call to order the Del Norte Solid Waste Management Authority of the City of Crescent City, County of Del Norte, State of California. This Tuesday, September 19th, 2017. Would you please call the roll?
Yes.
Here.
Here.
Here. I'm here. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. And begin. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. We'll begin our meeting with public comment. Any member of the public may address the Solid Waste Management Authority on any matter on or off the agenda. After receiving recognition from the chair, please give your name and address for the record and limit your comments to 3 minutes if you would, please. Do we have any public comment? Seeing no public comment, we'll close public comment and go on into our open session items. Under consent agenda, we have 2 items: the minutes from the August 15th, 2017 meeting and a budget transfer of $9,000.
Excuse me, Mr. Chair. The revised budget transfer is $109,000. I'd be happy to provide an explanation for that if you would like.
I've got both of these open, so since the modified doesn't have the entire agenda in it.
No, yeah, the modified is the short agenda, but the attachments are not all there, right?
Okay, so we have 2 items: the minutes for August 15th and the budget transfer of $109,000.
Second.
I just wanted go ahead and tell us what that extra 100,000 is.
Thank you for asking. So that extra $100,000 is for the landfill repair. We just bid that, and that's item 3.1 on tonight's agenda. But that is to add money to the budget, as this repair was not budgeted, and I worked with the county auditor, Clinton Shad, about the proper way to do this, and so it's following his direction. Functionally, though, it is creating a deficit in this year's budget that will be taken out of our cash balance.
All right. Do you have any public comment on the 2 items on the consent agenda? Seeing none, we'll bring it back then. Would you please poll the vote?
Yes.
Commissioner Naffa?
Yes.
Commissioner Greeno?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Chair Inscore?
Yes, very good. That takes care of our consent agenda. We'll move into our regular reports. Director's report.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. At this point, I'd like to introduce the new interim CEO for Hambro WSG, David Schlegel. There he is. As of 24th of the August 2017, I was informed that Wes White had resigned as CEO of Hambro WSG, and there included in your agenda are some changes to the board and informing you who they are. For a brief period of time, Joel Wallen was interim CEO. Now it's David Schlegel, and Joel is officially corporate secretary. So part of your modified agenda packet are just changes to the signature lines associated with change order 26. Other things that happened this past month are that we were closed for a brief period of time, 1 day each for Klamath and Gasky, and half a day at the Del Norte County Transfer Station due to smoke. Julinda Recycling also announced this past month that they will be closing on September 23rd as the county's only buyback center. Included in your agenda packet of the modified agenda is a written correspondence between Cal Recycle and myself, starting on item 2.1, attachment 1, essentially a letter specifically asking Cal Recycle. Our agency needs an official response from Cal Recycle describing where and how Del Norte County residents will be able to redeem their CRV beverage containers on and after September 24th. Essentially, their answer is the nearest location where you can redeem bottles and cans is in McKinleyville at Humboldt Sanitation at 2585 Central Avenue in McKinleyville. Of course, this is not a very satisfactory answer. We take very seriously that people intend to try to recycle, and they pay their nickel when they buy their bottles and cans, and it is not an unreasonable position that they should be able to conveniently redeem those deposits and get them somewhere. But it does appear that there will be a period of time when there won't be a redemption center in the county. There is at least one company that I'm aware of that is looking into trying to be a buyback center, but they are looking into the finances of it, and it's possible that they may not conclude it's a profitable venture to enter into at this point. So in a related issue, currently the only piece of legislation that it appears that it has a chance of addressing this is SB 102, and although there was not time enough to draft a letter and bring it as part of this board meeting, I did on my own initiative send a letter on my own behalf supporting SB 102, as I do think this is an issue of significant community concern, and we really need to be advocating for all solutions that might be able to address it. Moving on, outreach and events. This last Saturday, we did have our annual household hazardous waste collection event. We serviced 187 cars and brought in tons of household hazardous waste. And this Saturday, September 23rd, from 9 a.m. till 4 p.m., we will be having another mattress recycling event in partnership with the Mattress Recycling Council and Hambro WSG. Del Norte County households can bring up to 4 mattresses or box springs for no charge this Saturday between 9 a.m. and 4 p.m. at the Del Norte County Transfer Station. This does not include futons or water beds or inflatables or crib mattresses, and customers from Oregon will still be expected to pay for their mattresses. And please watch the weather. We ask that if it's raining, that you please tarp your load, try to keep those mattresses clean and dry, and that will increase the chances that we'll be able to recycle the materials from those mattresses. Let's see, there was also that same weekend, we had a coastal beach cleanup, and I'd like to personally thank Grant Werschel and the Smith River Alliance for really stepping up to manage the beach cleanup. Just days before the beach cleanup, it was not clear who was going to organize what, but Grant Werschel really stepped up and got notices in the paper. We had over 50 volunteers, and it looks like over 6,840 pounds of trash were cleaned up during this year's beach cleanup, so we very much appreciate their efforts. Let's see, I did mention that the closures due to smoke. This last month we also did water sampling. We just approved the change order. Let's see, One other thing attached to the director's report, attachment 6, is a letter from CalRecycle essentially rejecting our application to reduce the multiplier. The multiplier for our post-closure liability impacts the amount of that liability as reported in our annual audit. So it could potentially impact the cost of financing where we did need to finance things. But since we discovered that we did not need to do any special financing for either the transfer station floor repair or the repairs at the landfill, that dropped in priorities. And so we essentially weren't paying attention to that, but it won't have any direct fiscal impacts on the authority. And in future years, when we apply for that reduced multiplier, we can apply for a reduction of more than 1. So we might be able to make up for the lost time in future years. And with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Could you explain to me a little bit more about why the markets don't take the recycling back? And
Yes.
how that all plays out?
In general, what has happened during since about 2013, there's been a downturn in global recycling markets. Some of that's precipitated by actions in China, some of it's precipitated by the reduction in crude oil prices, but the bottom line is all commodities are not worth as much as they once were. The way California's bottle bill is supposed to work is that folks get the scrap value for the materials that they process and they're able to move to market, but the cost to process and transport those materials is calculated on a regular basis by CalRecycle, and then they make up payments to make up the difference from the bottles and cans funds. What has happened is their formula is old, and so their formula has not kept up with this downturn in the markets. And so since 2013, over 35% of the recycling centers in California, over 900 centers, have closed. This is not an isolated problem facing Del Norte County. We are now the third county to be without a recycling center. The other counties are Alpine and Sierra. But this is an increasing problem. We are still very much concerned about it, and we're working on it, but in all likelihood, there will be a period of time when people won't be able to get their nickels back from their bottles and cans.
Okay, but when I was reading through, you were saying that the markets are choosing to take a fine? The markets take
Oh,
a
the
fine?
grocery stores. The grocery stores.
That's what I'm talking about.
There is, yes, there is a provision in the law that allow grocery stores or other retailers who sell beverage containers or beverages to pay a fee or a fine instead of providing the service. The idea being that if you can't get your nickel from a buyback center, then you should be able to go back to the grocery store where you bought the thing and be able to get your
Right.
nickel back that way. But but there is a provision in the law that the retailers can pay a fine or a fee of $100 per day and not provide the service. So unfortunately, while the major retailers in Del Norte County, Walmart and Safeway, are in a position where they could afford $100 per day, the little retailers that say are a liquor store, they can't. So it becomes a real challenge, especially for the smaller grocers. But we will be working with Cal Recycle to try to get a buyback back in Del Norte County as soon as we can. But to be clear, all of the money from the bottles and cans and all of the money from the fines are all going to Cal Recycle. So that is the agency that we look to for help and answers about how we might be able to respond to this local crisis.
Okay, thank you.
When I go over to Fred Meyer's, they do have some machines there. And if we can't get a recycler operating here, would that make sense to get machines like that here?
The machines like that would need to be certified by Cal Recycle. They're known as reverse vending machines. And so those are certified by Oregon's system. And you might know Oregon's system and California's systems are different. And so they're, especially being a border community, it used to be that we would have a number of customers coming from Oregon trying to redeem their bottles because they get a better deal here. And similarly, now that they've changed the rates and Oregon is providing a slightly better refund, I would not be surprised if there are some people who are trying to take California beverage containers and redeem them over in Oregon. I don't know how people do or do not abide by or get around the rules, but I do know that they check, and I would not expect to be able to take a bottle from California and redeem it in Oregon or vice versa. So, but are reverse vending machines possible? Yes, they're possible, but they would need to be certified, and that would need to be an option pursued by either of these grocery stores.
Anything else? Okay, we'll go on with the financials then.
Okay. Sorry, flipping. Oh, I'm sorry. One other thing that was in the director's report, which I should highlight, is our annual report to Cal Recycle, which is essentially a summary of all of our recycling programs and how we're progressing. And increasingly, Cal Recycle is using this to get feedback from local communities about how they're implementing some state laws. So there is a statewide mandatory commercial recycling requirement, and so that is reported starting on page 14 of 19. And then there's additional requirements related to planning for organics processing, yard debris and food waste. And those answers start on page 17. But the bottom line is that it appears that we will, in the future, need to develop the capacity to process organics material at approximately 6,000 tons per year facility. That facility does not currently exist, and so I would anticipate in future years there will be increasing pressure from Cal Recycle to work on developing that facility. So that concludes the director's report. Moving on to the financial reports. First of all, I'd like to thank and congratulate Kathy Brewer for bringing our accounts receivable up to date. We just went through a process, which you'll see later on the agenda, for writing off some of those outstanding debts. So really, we're down to less than, should that process be approved, we would be down to less than $10 owed past 90 days. So that's very good. Regarding claims approved by director, not a lot of expenses this last month. The biggest ones, of course, are, as usual, is payments to Hambro WSG for the good services they provide. I will point out in the cash and reports that the last 4 months that the Del Norte County Transfer Station activities have been the busiest in our history. So we're really moving a lot of customers, moving a lot of tonnage, and our finances are showing that accordingly. So at this point in time, our gate receipts at the Del Norte County Transfer Station are $39,000 ahead of budget, and our fees from the franchise fees are $3,979 ahead of budget. So our revenues are ahead of budget, so budget's looking pretty good. With that, I'd be happy to answer any questions about the finances.
Have any questions, Mr. Ward? Okay. Well, if you don't have any it's good to know that we're still doing well financially. Let's go ahead and move into our discussion items. 3.1 is the landfill repair project. Let's,
Yes, I'd like to thank Keir Seymour and Rick Lockstead and Jim Barnes, who have really helped move this along. Up on your screen, you can see a drawing of the 3 areas that are needing repair at the Crescent City landfill. These were all damaged during the winter storms, and therefore are potentially partially reimbursable under the California Department of Office of Emergency Services. So we needed to bid this project. The bids just came in yesterday afternoon, and staff are recommending that we accept the low bid from Hemmingson Construction in the amount of $97,650.
Second.
I have a motion and a second. We have any questions? Who is the other bid from?
Tidewater. And it was, it's attached to your packet, but their bid was $137,740.
I just didn't see any names associated with it, so it's not that I could figure out. Okay. Any other questions? All right, any public comment regarding the repair at the landfill? All right, close public comment, bring it back to the board. Would you please poll the vote?
Commissioner Cowan,
Yes.
Commissioner Naffa,
Yes.
Commissioner Greeno,
Yes.
Commissioner Howard. Yes. Chair Inscore.
Yes. Very good. We'll move on then to our next item, flipping back and forth between these two. Make sure I've got
4.1.
everything. 4.1, collection franchise.
Jeremy Herber of Recology was not able to make it to this meeting today, so he gave me a verbal report, which I'm sharing with you. We are working on the cameras at the Del Norte County Transfer Station, trying to improve the security at the recycling drop-off center. The first load of recyclables from Del Norte went to the Samoa facility on the 5th of September. So that was about a month later than they initially expected, because it took a while to close. But they have now closed on the facility, and it is owned and is now called Recology Samoa. So also, Recology is looking to rent a portion of Julinda Recycling after September 23rd so that they can continue to process corrugated cardboard. That would not be a public facility, but it would be a place that Recology would be processing corrugated cardboard. They may also be processing their recyclables there, but again, it would not be open as a public buyback as it currently is. I did consult with Mr. Herbert to see if Recology had any interest in opening a buyback here in Del Norte County, and he said with all the other activities they're doing currently, they do not have interest in that. He still thinks that we will be able to keep to the original timeline, in which next month we can anticipate reviewing a processing agreement. He still thinks we can keep to that timeline, but it's possible, given that we're a month off, that we will be looking at another extension next month. But regardless, we will be discussing some of the details of the processing agreement next month.
Okay. Any questions? All right, let's go ahead and move on to 5.1 then.
Okay, 5.1 is essentially the letter from Hambro WSG explaining changes to the board that they've had, and this letter was dated 9/14, and since that time, my understanding is the only change that's made was that Mr. Schlegel is now interim CEO, and Mr. Wallen is corporate secretary. Is that correct?
We have gone through some changes at Hambro in the last month, actually month and a half. At the end of July, we secured financing that makes us a much more viable and go-forward company with Rogue Credit Union and Brookings. So as things progressed, we had some other changes and some conflicts, to be honest with you. But the board met yesterday and we elect on the 13th, the trustees who represent the stockholders, the ESOP of Hambro Forest Products, which owns Hambro WSG, met and elected 3 new directors to the board of directors, which Joel Wallen and I remain as directors, along with Larry Jackson, former Bank of America manager here in Crescent City, Richard Young, who you may know as the past harbor master, and the other one would be Robert Mathis, the previous general manager of Hambro Forest Products, and is now manager for Eco-Nutrients. The board met yesterday, and we elected some new officers to include me as now the interim CEO and continuing on as the CFO. We are going forward. We've got a very strong board now with some great financial background, looking for opportunities to include the CRV opportunity there, but we are a for-profit entity, and if it's viable, we'd like to be involved with it. So we're researching that along with some other major issues that we're dealing with as far as going forward as a viable company.
All right. Thanks, Dave. All right. Let's go ahead and move on then to 5.2, which is a change order 26.
5.2 is the result of negotiations that have gone over several months with Hambro WSG, essentially trying to resolve some of the disputes about the right amounts that they would be paid following August 2016. So those negotiations have concluded. I want to emphasize this will not impact the ratepayers at all. Customers at Delaware County Transfer Station will still be paying exactly the same amount they were paying before this change order. And this settles all issues that were brought up in the letter that was delivered in March, raising those issues of concern about the way that Hambro is paid. I believe all issues have been resolved, and staff recommend approval of this change order and the associated settlement agreement.
Okay. Questions? Nothing? Good? Okay. Do we have any public comment? Seeing no public comment, we'll bring it back to the board for action. We need a motion to approve. A motion to approve change order 26. Do I have a second?
Second.
I have a motion and a second. Will you please poll the vote?
Commissioner Cowan?
Yes.
Commissioner Naffa?
Yes.
Commissioner Greeno?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard? Yes. Chair Inscore?
Yes. Very good. We'll move on to 6.1.
We also need approval for the settlement agreement, which is attached.
So moved. All right. I have a motion to approve the settlement agreement as well. Do you have a second?
I will second that.
All right. Any public comment on the settlement agreement? Seeing none, bring back to the board. Would you please poll the vote?
Commissioner Cowan?
Yes.
Commissioner Naffa?
Yes.
Commissioner Greeno?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Chair Inscore?
Yes. All right. Very good. We'll move on to 6.1, bad debts.
Staff recommendation is to write off the 3 debts that are listed: certified construction in the amount of $690, certified plumbing in the amount of $1276, and Porter's Trucking in the amount of $2,033.84.
Motion to approve. Have a motion. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right. Have a motion, a second, any discussion? Okay, it'd be good to see these off the books. Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll close public comment and bring it back to the board. Would you please poll the vote?
Commissioner Cowan?
Yes.
Commissioner Naffa?
Yes.
Commissioner Greeno?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Chair Enscore?
Yes. 6.2, agreement regarding our audit.
Gosh, what an efficient meeting, I'm noticing. So this is essentially a letter of engagement with Patel and Associates, which is providing auditing services for the county. And it always makes the most sense for us to use the same external auditing firm. So staff are recommending approval of this letter of engagement in an amount not to exceed $10,500.
Motion to approve. Okay, I have a motion. Do you have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? One question, how many years has Patel done the audit?
This will be the third.
And has the same individual, primary individual, conducted the audit each time?
Primarily, we worked with Albert Hu, who's been fine to work with.
I just know that in discussions with our auditor at the city this last year, that after, I want to say it was after the third or fifth, that you can stay with the same firm, but you need to have a new primary that is the lead auditor, fresh eyes principle.
Okay.
So it's just something we discovered last year, that you could stay with the same firm if they just give a different lead person who takes the primary responsibility, just something we need to be aware of.
Okay, we're meeting with the auditors tomorrow, so I'll raise that issue.
Anyway, maybe it's just a city thing.
Must be.
You wanna compare bank accounts.
Oh, that was.
It wasn't nice at all. It wasn't meant to be. Any public comment? All right, bring it back to the board. Would you please pull the vote?
Commissioner Cowan? Commissioner Naffa?
Yes.
Commissioner Greeno?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Chair Enscore?
Yes. All right. We've got some bin pulls, both retroactive and future.
Right. So we have a total of 6 requests. Retroactive approval of the following: 1 bin for Find Your Park, 1 bin for Grills Gone Wild, 4 bins for the annual beach cleanup, and 1 bin for the household hazardous waste event, and 2 future events, 1 for Blues, Brews, and Cruise on October 6th, and 2 bins for Sea Cruise on October 7th. Staff recommend approval of all of these. And we would still have bins left through the end of the year, I think about 5.
All right. Can I get a motion to approve these? All right, I have a motion to approve. Do I have a second?
Second.
All right, any discussion? Any public comment? Seeing none, we'll bring it back to the board. Would you please poll the vote?
Commissioner Cowan?
Yes.
Commissioner Naffa?
Yes.
Commissioner Greeno?
Yes.
Commissioner Howard?
Yes.
Commissioner Chair Enscore?
Yes, very good. We have one we have left.
Just
That's
to
it.
close session, sir.
We are at the end of our regular session. We do not anticipate there to be any reporting out of closed session, so we will adjourn from our regular meeting and move it into closed session. Thank you.